So today we'll be talking on plagiarism and ethics. It will be a brief class, and probably the rest of the time we'll deal with any questions we have, and on our research work, the written aspect of research work. So plagiarism and ethics. So basically, what's plagiarism? In simple terms, using other people's work to write yours, in the sense that you basically take word for word, or probably you tend to paraphrase the work without making a reference to the people who you got the work from. Um, Going back to for some of you guys who submitted your last assignment, I had some slight issues when it came to the references. But I believe we are all in everything to do the process. For some of us, we didn't add a reference. We did the reference in the sentences or in the text. For instance, one of the writer from someone said the line was something like this. The WHO did a research in 2014, and this was found, um, making mention of WHO in the sentence is a reference on its own, but when it comes to research work and the appropriate way of writing reference in research work, that doesn't necessarily count. Because I going back to the previous lectures we had, I didn't really dive into discussing on how to do in-text and end of write-up reference. They are two different things. So what I mean by in-text reference is, for instance, you paraphrase a whole paragraph from a write-up, and in case anyone has a question, you can just write in the box, because I'm seeing whatever you guys ask, so that I'll be able to respond to it. So going back to what I was saying, referencing, for instance, you read an article, and then maybe the article is about, just say, 1,000 words, and you paraphrase that 1,000 words in your own words in probably 5 to 10 lines. Now, under plagiarism, it's required for you to make reference to that article or that research work at the end of each sentence or each paragraph, based on the paper you use for the literature review. At the end of the book, or the write-up reference is the one whereby, which most of you, if you read, you're accustomed to reading research papers and stuff like that, whereby at the ending you get a whole bunch of references. Sometimes they are being numbered like 1 to 100 and stuff like that. So that's the end of a book, of a research work reference. But the one that comes in the text um, are there for the main purpose of referring to, okay, yeah, you said something about vitamin D and its effects on probably human blood or something. So where did you what resources did you use to make that factual statement? So that's what most research reviewer look for. Um, so yes, so plagiarism, it's basically what a lot of people do without knowing. There's a direct the non-intentional plagiarism, whereby you probably paraphrase thing, as I was saying, without making reference or acknowledging the resources you used for that research, for that statement or that fact, or acknowledging the person who took the effort in coming to that conclusion for that statement. And it's so as types of plagiarism, we have different types of plagiarism. Now, the reason why I'm diving into the different types of plagiarism is to help us both consciously and unconsciously know um, what is plagiarism, or to have a level of understanding towards plagiarism so that we don't find ourselves guilty of it. Complete plagiarism is one of the severe forms of plagiarism, whereby a manuscript or a study that someone else created or had submitted, or it's already been published as a journal under the person's name or group of people who did the research work, is being um, taken exactly. It's just more an extent like doing a copy and paste and all, and then you tend to claim that that's fully your work and all. So that's complete plagiarism, and it's really been found against as other plagiarism as we go ahead. Source-based plagiarism um, usually occur because of different types of sources. For example, when a researcher references a source that is incorrect or does not exist, a lot of us fall short of this in the sense that probably we're out of time, or we can't get the exact material or resources we need. So we tend to use reference something. For instance, we have a statement that says about and that states about an let's say pancreatic cancer, and then the reference to that statement is being looked in depth into is talking about probably neuroscience. So it's just the time to just put a reference just for the sake of putting a reference to justify, okay, yeah, there's a reference after each paragraph or each sentence. But when the reference is being looked into, it's totally different from what the paragraph or the sentence is trying to talk about. Um, it but only cites the primary source of information. But this types leads to an increasing number of references sources, as I was saying. So, like for instance, when I was in my undergrad, there was a limit to the minimum. That's the minimum references you should get typically. Things like, okay, you need to have about 100 references to be able to show how authentic your work is, which is a standard actually. You need to get, when you're doing a literature-based research work, you need to get a lot or a huge number of references to justify what you are trying to talk about. But at that instance, with with the shortage of time, a lot of us tend to just get as many references that it's not necessarily related to what is being written in paper reviews, which is found on upon. That's why most times I try as much as possible to advise people when you are doing a research work, do what you can basically handle to an extent. You starting the standard saying 100, having a good handful of references or research work being reviewed is also good. And that's another reason whereby teamwork is also important. For instance, you have five people and you need about 100, like a good number of literatures, like 100. You divide the 100 within five people. So we're looking at about 20, if I'm not wrong, per person, which to an extent is doable. So source-based plagiarism, to summarize it, is basically writing a statement or writing a or reviewing a paper and using some other literature review as a reference. So basically, the reference being used does not correlate with the statement or the fact or what's being said in that paper. Direct plagiarism is a verbatim plagiarism. It occurs when an author copies the text of another author word for word without the use of quotation marks or attributes, thus passing it as his or her own. In that way, it is like complete plagiarism, but it refers to sections rather than all of another paper. So the difference between these direct plagiarism and complete plagiarism is the complete plagiarism is basically taking a whole article. That's like that's an overkill kind of a thing. Taking a whole article and then taking away the name of the author or the name of the author who wrote the paper and claiming it as though it's yours. Why direct plagiarism is more of a sectional thing, whereby going back to our breakdown of the sections in papers. So, for instance, the heading of the paper is yours, the abstract is yours. Then you go to the section of the literature review, and then the whole section of that literature review is from and that whole entire paper, word for word, verbatim, no changing comma, no changing anything. Absolutely every single thing is the way it is in the other journal with the other authors. So that's direct plagiarism. Self-author plagiarism. Now, self-author plagiarism is for instance, if you have your son who has done several research work previously, and then based on the fact that okay, you did the research work, you feel you have the authority, which obviously you do to an extent in copying that same thing, those same words and everything in your new research work. That's self-author, so you were the author, which is right. But using that in the new write-up, it's plagiarizing. The best way to do that is it's yeah making the reference and um, paraphrasing the words. Uh, it's it's also an important thing to do. So basically, auto-plagiarism, also known as self-plagiarism or duplication, happens when an author reuses significant portion of his or her previous published work without attribution. So you have to attribute the current research work to your previous ones. Try as much as possible not to use the same words, not to use word for word. Standing it be your write-up and you are the sole proprietor or authorship of that work. Thus, this type of plagiarism is most likely to involve published researchers rather than university students. The severity of this kind of infraction is under debate depending on the copied content. Many academic journals, however, have strict criteria on the percentage of authors' work that is reusable. So there's still a certain level of debate to be that it's well appropriate to rewrite. If you have to paraphrase it, then good. But at the same time, making reference, if you have to put your name as a reference, then fine. But at least there should be a correlation to where um, the fact was gotten from. Paraphrasing plagiarism. Yeah, paraphrasing plagiarism is a thing. Um, as I said, you can paraphrase a write-up, but when the write-up isn't referenced, it becomes an issue. Minor changes in the sentence and using it as one's own. Now, using it as your own is the issue. As I said, if you are going to paraphrase a paper written by someone else, try as much as possible to acknowledge whoever or whatever institution that paper or that fact was gotten from at the time you did your research work. Because students often do not have a clear understanding of what constitutes plagiarism, they are recommended for research and writing available to reduce the risk of paraphrasing plagiarism. Inaccurate authorship. Inaccurate authorship is or attributes that can happen in two ways. In one form, when an individual contributes a manuscript but does not get credit for it. The second form is the opposite, when an individual gets credit without contributing to the work. This type of plagiarism, whichever way it occurs, is a violation of the code of conduct and research. Now, what this is talking about is you have a group of people, like what we are trying to achieve with the full research work on on the class and Google Class room, you have four people in a research work, and then there are two sides to it. The first side is you have the four people in the research work, and everyone did their own task based on their location or the distribution for what they should do. And then out of the four people, one person isn't acknowledged or recognized when the research work is being published, withstanding the person contributing to that. That's an inaccurate authorship. That's why when we are trying to publish research work, the previous ones we've published, they always try to send everyone an email and try to get a signature from everyone stating if they contributed or the one or the other participated in the research work and stuff like that to be able to acknowledge it and know that okay, this person actually attested to them contributing to the research work. So omitting someone who contributed to it is a violation, or adding someone who had no participation or no contribution to research work is a form of plagiarism. Mosaic plagiarism may be more difficult to detect because it interlaces someone else's phrases or text within its own research. It's also known as patchwork plagiarism, and it is intentional or dishonest. What this is talking about or trying to talk about is, for instance, you have five paragraphs in five sentences in a paragraph, and each sentence in those five um, sentences in the paragraph are basically taken from five different journals or five different write-ups. And then at the end of the day, end up referencing one journal or probably end up taking it as your own research work or your own wordings and things like that. That's a kind of patchwork plagiarism, taking everything from everywhere to make it seem as though it's one person or as though it was your own idea from the beginning. Accidental plagiarism, whether intended or unintended, there is no excuses for plagiarism and the consequences are often the same. However, plagiarism may be accidental if it occurred because of neglect, mistakes, or unintentional paraphrasing. Students are likely to commit accidental plagiarism, so universities should stress on the importance of educating about this form of plagiarism. So, accidental plagiarism is it's I would like to say it falls under the part of not knowing what plagiarism is or not knowing what leads or can cause plagiarism or the types of plagiarism. So it's more of an innocent way of doing things. However, plagiarism is plagiarism. So as much as we paraphrase, now when I keep emphasizing on paraphrasing, paraphrasing is basically you are doing a literature review. You need resources to be factual resources to be able to back your paper review. Now, sitting down to read one paper in a day and then coming to your laptop and then, okay, ask your question, what did I learn from this one journal or one research paper? And then just writing it down, probably in 100 words. Um, that is the paraphrasing I'm referring to. And at the end of the day, that 100 words is now in reference to that one journal paper. So imagine you having to go through, let's say, 10 papers, and for each paper, you have to do 100 words, and each 100 words are being referenced to each paper you do. So we're looking at about 8,000 words from about 10 papers. I don't know if anyone understand the calculation I just made. You need 100 words. I'm just giving an example. 100 words per paper per journal. So taking a whole day out, not a whole day, but part of your day because we all have other things to do. And then you read through a whole journal and then go to your laptop and type in 100 words, what did you learn from that one journal paper you just read? What this the way I do it sometimes is okay, what are the outlines of things I've learned? So for instance, the paper is talking about let's say what topic? Let's say Alzheimer's disease, and the paper broke down Alzheimer's disease to um, maybe the effect of illicit drugs, the effect of genetics, the effect of the environment, um, the impact of the healthcare to Alzheimer's disease. Now, those are four different aspects. Now, I go to my system and my laptop, my Microsoft Word, and break it down to those parts. Now, the next step is what did I learn or what did the journal speak about those different parts and the impact of healthcare in probably 20 words. What what did I learn from the paper in 20 words? Then with that, it makes it easy for you. So now let me just break everything down so that everyone can follow me. In case you don't understand what I'm saying or you're not following, you can put it in the question box. So we need a person, we need 10 papers, right? 10 journal papers per person. Then each journal paper write about 100 words from each journal paper. Now that 100 words each journal paper, and each journal paper has its own breakdown in what they are trying to talk about. And let's say you pick 5 points from the journal paper on what the journal paper is trying to talk about. So each of those 5 points, you divide it by 100. So technically, you're talking about 20 words per point. So sitting down at 20 words yeah, per point. So sitting down and typing 20 words shouldn't be that hard to do. So you summarize what you learn from that subheading in the journal in 20 words. Now at the end of the day, you have 5 subheadings and 100 words per journal for that day, and you do the same thing for the remaining 19 journal papers because we're looking at 20 journal papers. At the end of the year, we have about 1,000 words and roughly about 5 times 20, that's about 100 subtopics. Now, technically, you already have your journal paper already written by just doing that simple format and that. So yeah, so accidental plagiarism, it's it's what as I said earlier, lack of the understanding of what plagiarism is all about, which is something we should try and after this class we should try and go through the videos and I'll translate and paste this in the Google Classroom so that I can review it and read it and understand what exactly plagiarism is all about in order to avoid finding ourselves um, as a victim of plagiarism. So basically that's the lesson learned. Plagiarism, there are various type of plagiarism. You have complete plagiarism, which is basically taking the whole journal. For instance, the journal paper is the effect of cocaine on the mental state of, of, of African American males, and then you pick the whole paper and then claim it's yours. Source-based plagiarism is basically um, mis- misrepresenting the source in which you got the information. For instance, you talked about cocaine, and then due to shortage of time, the reference you use is talking about marijuana, um, things like that. Direct plagiarism, it's basically direct plagiarism. It's basically taking the word um, directly word for word from an article. Um, in the article, it said something. Okay, the the effect of cocaine on the mental state of men, um, and then it had a comma, and then said something else, and then you pick the same thing. No paraphrasing in your own words or things like that. Why self and author plagiarism? Basically, oh, you've done several research for previously. Based on that, authorship or owner of that journal, you feel you should have the right to use the same wording in your current research paper, and that's self and author plagiarism. It's under debate, but at the same time, it's preferably better for us as researchers to be innovative and creative, to show that aspect of us without having to copy the same things we've done before. It might be related to the previous research work we've done before, but it's preferably way better for us to um, um, paraphrase it in our current research work. Paraphrasing plagiarism, it's basically trying to be smart and maybe thinking they are into in or thinking they we into I and stuff like that. Not referring to the word paraphrasing I've been using for a while, which is basically summarizing what you understand or what your take is from a certain journal you've reviewed. Inaccurate authorship is adding or removing an author who either contributed or didn't contribute to research work. Mosaic plagiarism is basically taking words or sentences from different research work and making it together as one paragraph and then referencing it as one person or taking the full ownership of the statement. Accidental plagiarism is out of um, lack of understanding of what plagiarism is. So basically that's all we have today about plagiarism and ethics is part of plagiarism. How do you go about your research work? Are you ethical about it? Are you truthful about it? Also, ethics under the aspect of lab research work falls under the part of how do you do your research work. A good example is, for instance, are you inhumane in your research work? Do you take certain precautions in in your research work when it comes to human testing? And do you just do things unethically? Do you take a group of minority group population and then run experiments on them, like what happened to the Jews during the Second World War, where several experiments were being done on them. Was that ethical? Things like that. So ethics look into how you as a researcher, how do you handle your paperwork? How honest are you when it comes to your research work? When it comes to the paper aspect, when it comes to the lab aspect, how humane are you in handling your experiments when it comes to humans and even when it comes to animals? How how humane are you? You treat the animal terribly when running your experiments and things like that. So that's basically the aspect of ethics. So I don't know if any of us have any question for me that I can address right now.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for the the lecture. Although I'm still trying to grasp some of the concepts because prior to now, I thought I didn't know that there are different, what do you call it now, aspects of plagiarism. I just thought plagiarism, it was just a kind of broad term to define. Like I think I was very familiar with the direct one, direct plagiarism. So I didn't realize that not direct. I mean the first one you talked about as in just lifting up somebody's entire work and then passing it off as yours. So I think that's the one I was very familiar with. I didn't realize there are other aspects. So I hope I would have a personal copy of this, of your presentation, so I can still go through it and get a better understanding. But I have a question now, and it has to do with, I've heard people in the past who said that in their bid to quote or to to reference someone, they realize that the person they were referencing or the person's work they copy, will I say copied now, or they referenced, they were trying to acknowledge the person and realize that that person they were trying to acknowledge stole or picked the work or lifted the work from somewhere else, from another source. So in you're trying to build up your reference after you write a paper, how do you try to avoid a situation where you quote someone who is not the original author, but you need to quote the original person? So how do you really go about that?
To answer your question, I'm trying to understand your question, but let me just um,
Okay,
it based on
let me try next. Mm.
let me just say it based on what I understand, so that
Okay,
you can correct me.
okay,
What I understood from your question is okay. There's you're trying to get you got a journal, quite okay, and you're trying to review that journal, and then you finished reviewing the journal in your paperwork, your paperwork is done and everything, and then you
yeah.
reference that journal, but it
Hmm.
happens that the person you are referencing in that journal didn't actually get the work, the right person who referenced the work. Am I correct?
Okay, the person is not the original author. You think the person is, and you reference the person simply because you took the information from the person's journal, only to realize that that person was not the original author. So, how do you
The best way I can
resolve that?
the best way I can really answer that question is for every published work, especially on PubMed, when you reference the authors or the author of that
Mm,
particular paperwork, it it it, it doesn't become your fault for the person being should I use the word ignorant on the laws behind plagiarism, because
okay.
job is basically referencing who you took the work from. So if the person did his or her reference wrongly, you shouldn't be penalized for the reference, rather the person, because obviously I don't believe the paperwork you're referring to should have been a public paperwork. So the people who should have done the job initially should have been the company or the journal who accepted the paperwork publication. Um, Hello there, Royal. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
So it
It
shouldn't.
does.
Okay.
But
So
but if you really want to do your due diligence, like for me as a person now, how do I try to be sure? How do I ensure that I'm quoting or the original author and not somebody who propagated the work, or who, like, how would I put it now, who I don't want to give credit to the wrong persons, but I want to be sure that whoever I'm referencing is the original writer, even if it wasn't from his own.
well,
I mean, even if he was not the direct source I picked the information from. I don't know if that explains.
yeah. The two things one should do in that instance is first and foremost, make sure your resources for your research work, your journals or your books and everything are from reputable source, such as PubMed, etc., etc. Secondly, if you want to go in depth in being sure that you are recognizing or acknowledging the appropriate person, if you go through the person's research work, um, the person should reference, for instance, after each paragraph or each sentence or each statement, a researcher should reference where they got the work from. So if you want to go in depth, you check the reference per the information you're trying to take, then you go straight to that journal and then confirm if what the person is saying is actually from that journal. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's like doing a double check kind of a.
Mm.
So for instance, the resources you're trying to list from that journal is maybe the management of the treatment. Maybe that's just a section the person spoke about, and then the person referenced a journal from probably 2019 or something. Then go to that journal and then confirm if the exact thing the person summarized or paraphrased, if the person is acknowledging the exact resources he or she took it from. Then at that point, you've done a double check or double confirmation to be sure, okay, this this fact is actually correct. Then it's left for you to decide who to reference at that point. Should I reference the initial journal, the initial author of that journal, or should I reference the person the initial journal took the fact from? I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So anyone has any other question? So in case later on anyone has any other question, you can post it on the WhatsApp group chat, or you can preferably post it on the Google Classroom. If we are not registered or logged in yet, we should try as much as possible to log in. So that will be basically all for today's class. Hopefully we'll be having the next class by next week, and for the assignment, we should try as much as possible to contribute. For those of us that haven't gotten a research topic, you can pick one of the four research topics on the Google Classroom. Then we'll start working on them. And another thing again, I advise most of us to do is, if you already have a research work as the spearhead, the person heading the topic, try as much as possible to pick one other research work, or if possible, you can pick the other three, no problem. Because the goal of this is, at the end of the day, if I have to publish the four of them, it will make more sense for you to have four research work published in your name that you contributed to, than having one, because it helps boost your portfolio, especially when you're applying for residency and stuff like that, or applying for any job in the health sciences. Having a lot of reference, you know a bit of everything about